tell a little story. I had a guy in the training program. This was, never mind how many years, it was years back. I was training team leaders in a large organization that were leading other people without formally being their manager. So the people they led didn't report to them. There was no appraisal conversations being had. The salary wasn't set by them, but they had to lead and influence teams of people without having a title or being the manager. So we had this training, and I spoke about this inner dialogue early in the training. And we talked about, does it tell the truth? Does it interpret? What's good with having this faculty of thinking available so we can reason with ourselves and even talk things through with ourselves? What's the downsides and pitfalls of being unaware of the fact that human beings live inside an inner dialogue or a flood of thinking? And people have insights and whatnot. This was a 2-day training. So the second day in the morning, I asked the group insights or reflections from the first day. And this guy raises his hand. And he was shocked is too strong a word, but you could see he was impacted is a better word by something. And he said, you know what? Yesterday when you spoke about this inner dialogue in our heads and all the thinking that was on, I thought, yeah, I know that. It's like, yeah, we think, and yeah, well, we do. And then nothing more than that, he said, really. And then I left the training. He said, I went home by bus, and I sat on the bus, and then I discovered something, he said. I really have a voice in my head, and it talks. And he was kind of jokingly speaking about it like, it's a voice in my head, but it talks all the time. You could also call it your thinking. But it's good to talk about it as a voice, I think, because it makes it more separate from you, because you are not your thinking. You are not your voice. You're having thoughts. You're hearing a voice. And he said, it was really loud and it talked a lot. And he said it was fascinating because there was an instance where I suddenly realized I never heard this before. He said, I always thought that the way it is kind of the way it is. I always lived my life like, well, the way I think of things, that's how things are. So I just had to kind of try to endure things and make the best of how it was, because it was as it was. And on the bus, I heard it, he said. And I discovered, like, I don't need to think like that. That can shift. And he was like, I have a choice whether to listen to this thing or not. It's not how it is. I can choose to listen and live inside that reality, or I can choose maybe something else. And he was so taken by this. He was like, he never had a relationship to his own thinking. He lived his life inside whatever thinking goes on. And what's fascinating with me, that's not just that one guy in Helsingborg on a bus. That's all human beings, including myself. When I don't wake up to the fact that this thing in my head that describes my life, my world, reality, it's just one possible interpretation of what goes on. I'm stuck in it. But when I wake up to the fact, like, my heart is beating, my lungs are breathing me, my mind is talking to me, okay, then let's see. What do I want? There is so much more possible than we think. You are so much more capable than you think. You can feel so much deeper feelings of well-being and appreciation and contentment than you think. And it starts with waking up to this fact of an inner dialogue. And this guy in a bus, back to him, it was hilarious because he said, I sat on the bus and I felt like, wow, this is amazing. I've never seen life like this. And then he said, I got frightened. And you can see he shifted again. He was a very expressive guy. So I said, why did you get afraid? Well, because then I thought, he said, those mass murderers you read about in the papers that stab 20 people and they kill people with shotguns, they all say, those horrible people, that the voice in my head told me to do it. And then he giggled because he realized he didn't have a mental disease or something. It was just, he was on the normal spectrum, right? He could hear it as a voice for what it was. So this is where all transformation starts to me. That's too much of a truth, actually. I take that back. I'll say it's very transformative for people to wake up to the principles of being human. And this is what the customer talked about this week. How come people don't talk about this? How come nobody told me that what I'm feeling is actually just only a reflection of my own inner dialogue and my thinking? It doesn't have anything to do with circumstance. There's no feelings going on for me without the thinking that I have. How come nobody talks about that? How come nobody talks about the beauty and wonder and possibility that starts to arise when this inner dialogue goes quiet? Because when your inner dialogue goes quiet, instantly you fall back into a sense of stress-free clarity and contentment, regardless if the invoices aren't made, or the bathroom delivery is late, or your dream team hasn't come through yet. Your life experience doesn't depend on how your inner dialogue talks. This participant I mentioned that went from vacation feeling 2 weeks per year to vacation feeling every week of the year, he had now started to discover, going deeper in his journey, that even when his inner dialogue and mind was busy and occupied and stressed, he could experience a deep feeling of well-being at the same time. And that's not him, that's all human beings. We can be kind to ourselves when we're not thinking well. We can feel compassion with our own thinking when it's not kind to us. You can have a sense of underlying well-being even if you're a little stressed with a deadline. So these are the topics I love to speak about. And I love to explore myself, because my life gets richer and richer still the more I look into these principles behind the human experience.